What's up? Welcome into this Wednesday edition of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We got a jam-packed episode for you guys today. Obviously, the George Pickens news we're going to hit in a little bit, but we're going through NFC North and NFC South off-season grades. We're going to be doing 2 divisions per show for our next 4 shows to hit every single team in the NFL, giving out grades, putting a bow on this offseason before we start looking ahead to next season. We're going to look ahead a little bit on this show, though, next season. But Kyle missed Monday and Tuesday. I was in Key West, Florida. You said you had been there over the weekend, too. Unbelievable place. I'd never been. I went actually when I was a kid, but not actually to – it was more just like we stayed at the hotel the whole time. But downtown Key West is one of the coolest places in America.
So obviously you and I both went down to the Keys, and for people that aren't familiar, the Florida Keys, Florida doesn't just end in Miami. That's just not like where it ends. As somebody who grew up on the East Coast, I'm ashamed to know that I used to think that Miami was like the end of the earth as it pertained to South Florida, but it just keeps going. It's just like a bunch of little atolls down there, little islands that have been connected by, the infrastructure is a 2-lane road that goes for essentially like 100 miles down there. We stopped and went to a place called Isla Mirada. Beautiful. I thought there was beaches in Key West. Turns out a lot of rocks. Yes. And it also turns out if you don't have access to a boat, or if you don't have a boat and you've got little toddlers, it's going to be a long couple days. There's only so much IPAs. There's so many IPAs, only so many IPAs that I can drink to be able to, handle it. But you're in the prime of your life. You're a young man. You went with your beautiful fiance down to Key West, Florida, which is way further south than I was. And it's like a proper city. How did you find Key West?
So that's what I didn't realize before moving down here. Like Florida geography. One, I was really only familiar with like Orlando. My parents live in Orlando.
Mickey Mouse.
One, Miami's so much farther south than Orlando. It's like 3.5 hours all the way to Miami. And then you go 3 hours more south to get to Key West. So there's like this long stretch all the way down there. And it truly is the southernmost part of the contiguous United States. It's like as low as you can go. I stood at the pier last night that said southernmost part of the USA. It's really cool. But some interesting fact, like there are chickens all over this island. Like truly just walking around. We had breakfast the first day there, and 2 chickens fought at the table, like underneath our table. I thought I was watching a cockfight. Like it was true. Like they're just everywhere. And I asked someone, they're like,
did you gamble on it?
I could have. The one was super old. It was the one that was gonna, and so it had to have another chicken protect it. It was kind of sick to watch it.
Rules, prison chicken rules down there in Key West.
But yeah, you said there's not beaches, so you really have to have a boat. We actually passed Jimmy Johnson's restaurant on the way down there. I think he's a frequenter of Key West, but I highly recommend, if no one's ever been, that it was truly one of the more unique and cool places I've ever been to in America. So there's our weekend recap, but let's get to the trade recap. George Pickens is now a Dallas Cowboy. Not technically, I don't think it's gone fully through yet, but expected to go through today. He's a Dallas Cowboy. The Steelers get back a 3rd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and they give a 6th-round pick to Dallas. So to kind of even out whatever that money is for the numbers are in that trade compensation. That's not a lot, but also I think he came with this red flag warning that came at the end of last season where there probably weren't too many teams lining up to be like, yeah, I want to add this dude to my locker room. So if you can, though, the Cowboys they had Randy Gregory, they had Greg Hardy, they've had, problem character guys before and made it work sometimes. Obviously, when you have problem character guys, they're not always going to be 100%. That's the whole rub here. But they've made it work. And for the Dallas Cowboys and how desperate they were to add a wide receiver, I love this move for them.
To try to frame what I'm about to talk about, I Googled, what does a cowboy do? And herding and caring for cattle on a ranch, traditionally on horseback, is what a cowboy does. Now, they've had one really good horse out there at receiver in CeeDee Lamb, and they've got a horse at quarterback in Dak Prescott. And everybody knows how I feel about Dak Prescott. I feel like you can win with him. And obviously, CeeDee Lamb's got the chops. Shout out to Adam Shine. That's one of his throwaway lines for CeeDee Lamb. They brought this guy in, George Pickens, who is an absolute Mustang, a wild horse.
Yes.
He's a guy that nobody's ever been able to put a saddle on and really tame, break the horse, as it were. You watch some of these shows and some of the best Cowboys and these guys out west, they're patient, they're calm, and they find a way to break the horse. I'd like to think that a guy like Dak Prescott is maybe what George Pickens needs to be able to take his game to the next level. The Dallas Cowboys love a superstar, and you alluded to some of the huge personalities and some of the guys who have towed the line or leapt over the line as it pertains to the character stuff. George Pickens checks all the boxes for what the Dallas Cowboys are going to try to get done, and what they've done for decades now in Dallas. Jerry told us to wait around and that he was going to make some moves and they were going to have some trades lined up. I had no idea I was going to be waking up today and hearing George Pickens going to be in a Cowboys uniform. The NFC East is going to be unbelievable in terms of explosiveness on the offensive side of the ball. And obviously Dallas, they re-signed Osa, and they went and they drafted guys on the defensive line as well. I think it was Ezeraku is going to be an edge rusher there, correct?
Yep.
Opposite Micah. So they've got the Dragons on offense now, and with Dak Prescott, with CeeDee Lamb, with George Pickens, and then on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be able to get after those stars at the quarterback position in the NFC East. But look, it all comes down to, is George Pickens going to use this as an opportunity to reinvent himself? Is this going to be a renaissance of sorts for George Pickens, the person, the teammate, the preparer? Is he going to be in it in the biggest moments? Because we all know George Pickens is one of the most talented people on any field that he's on. No matter what city, no matter what night of the week, he's the guy. But if he can't get right between the ears, we got big problems. So for the Cowboys, find a way. And for Schottenheimer, it's going to be quite a task to get accomplished with his first few days in office.
Right. Hey, welcome to your first head coaching job. Here is George Pickens.
Your defensive players got a huge podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Win a Super Bowl. They love McCarthy. He's gone. Good luck. And here's George Pickens.
I will say, though, this makes their draft strategy make a lot more sense. We're like, why in the world did they draft, almost a dozen guys in this class, and none of them are a wide receiver? This trade was obviously in the works for a while, I'm guessing, because they would have taken a wide receiver. They should have taken a wide receiver, and they're not. But we also kept saying about this wide receiver class, it's a lot of Robins to like a Batman. And that's why we thought maybe they'd be involved in it, because they have a Batman, right? You have a CeeDee Lamb. Well, George Pickens is a Batman too, right? I am obviously extremely high on him, but even just like the numbers.
He's never Bruce Wayne. He's always Batman. He needs to be Bruce Wayne every once in a while.
Yes.
Okay.
He needs to
chill out. Put the suit on. Okay.
You can't take the suit off, dude.
Yeah.
It's 2 a.m. He's up all night and he can't take the suit off. But with George Pickens, like, he has averaged over 2 yards. So 2 yards per route runs, kind of like the cutoff for a number one wide receiver. Only 20 guys in the NFL did it last year. He's done it each of the last 2 seasons. This is not a guy who's like a complimentary piece to CeeDee Lamb. This is a guy that, like, if you do not put attention his way, if he gets the one-on-ones, if you are giving attention to CeeDee Lamb's way, it's child's play. Like, he is a true alpha talent at the position, and he put up those numbers with Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Now he goes to Dak Prescott. Like, it is going to be a massive upgrade for him, a massive upgrade of the Dallas Cowboys. They all of a sudden, in this arms race that is the NFC East, which is, at least in terms of the Commanders and the Eagles, probably as stiff a competition at the top of a division as exists in the NFL right now. They at least can put themselves in the conversation of, should things bounce one way or the other, they could take that division. They could still be a playoff team. Before this trade, though, I said it. They were not. I did on last week's show, when I did the solo show, I was like, this is not a playoff team. They are not good enough right now. This one put them in the ballpark, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's still going to be a steep hill to climb with those two other teams that you mentioned at the top of the board. Obviously, the Eagles, people are going to be counting on them to have a Super Bowl hangover, but you and I both know they just found a way to reload. They took the names and numbers off the backs of the jerseys that we fell in love with and just replaced them with new ones, and they're going to reload, retool, do the same damn thing. It's what Howie Roseman's done historically, and obviously the quarterback has stepped into another echelon in terms of greatness. We all thought Jalen Hurts was good. He's great now. Super Bowl winner. He almost got it done a couple years ago. So he's concreted there. And obviously, as long as that offensive line's intact, they're going to be great. For Washington, Jaden Daniels, he burst onto the scene with a meteoric rise to the top. Rookie player of the year, offensive player of the year. But people were like, hey, how about MVP? Let's throw him in the conversation for that. They added a left tackle who has been great for the last decade. They're not messing around. So for the Cowboys, it's an arms race in that NFC East. And unfortunately, there's a fourth team we haven't even mentioned in that division. And we got a lot of questions about that too.
Yeah, the Cowboys as it stands right now, Vegas odds 7.5 wins. Obviously, a lot of that's because you got no more freebies. There's no more freebies in the East. Every single time you get a win there, it's going to be a dogfight. So we'll see. We'll get to the East, I believe, on tomorrow's show when we go through grades. But we're going to get to the North, and we're going to get to the South. Off-season grades right after this.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. Remarkable! To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R. Now streaming on Paramount+.
Let's get to the Chicago Bears, where a little peek at their offseason so far. They obviously retained Kyler Gordon, made him, the highest paid slot corner in football, even if not technically the highest paid slot corner. They advertised it as such. They added a bunch of guys. Obviously, head coach Ben Johnson, probably chief amongst them, but a complete overhaul of their offensive and defensive lines. You added both new guards and Joe Thuney at left guard, Jonah Jackson at right guard, your new center and Drew Dahlman, new defensive tackle Grady Jarrett, new edge rusher Dayo Odeyingbo. Some key losses: Tevin Jenkins, Keenan Allen, Coleman Shelton, all starters or saw starting time. Really, the only one amongst them that they might feel the loss of is Tevin Jenkins, but he just couldn't stay healthy. That's why he signed for as little as he did. His back issues, I believe, are just debilitating, or could be debilitating at this point in his career. And then in the draft, all they did is went out and added some weapons for young quarterback Caleb Williams, Colston Loveland, Michigan tight end, Luther Burden, the Missouri wide receiver. I want to hear your grade before I give mine, because I'm a little afraid of how good the Chicago Bears offseason has been. And I say that as someone who's not been on the train of, they're talked about as offseason winners year in, year out, or at least have been kind of in the Ryan Poles era. I haven't gone that far in years past, but I'm curious to see your thoughts before I give mine.
I'm going to give them an A, and I'm not just being a homer here. We've covered this thing from the inception of the thought that Ben Johnson could inherit Caleb Williams and be able to tailor make his offense. And then we watched Ryan Poles get on board, obviously, with Ben Johnson and his image, going and getting Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney. I think the Joe Thuney one was really the icing on the cake. They would have had a good offseason regardless without Joe Thuney, but this makes it great. You talked about the additions to the defensive line with Dayo Odeyingbo and Grady Jarrett. Obviously, we want to see if Grady Jarrett still got the juice that he became feared for having. The other guy, Drew Dahlman, center from the Atlanta Falcons, now a Chicago Bear, took less money, in fact, to become a Chicago Bear. Drew Dahlman, an athletic center, somebody that I think Ben Johnson can utilize as a spearhead in some of his creative concepts, getting the center out in space. We've seen it happen in Philadelphia a number of times, obviously with Jason Kelce prior to their new look group, and they're still doing the same thing. Centers can be a weapon. Drew Dahlman, I really believe, will be a weapon. We go to the draft. Colston Loveland, not the guy that I had mocked, but somebody that I was very happy to hear his name called because he can do it all. He can do it all. And you know what? We love Tyler Warren because he lined up at quarterback and we interviewed him. But I was thrilled when Loveland was drafted. Luther Burden, a guy that we talked about during the draft process as being truly elite level skills, but some question marks about Monday through Saturday.
Yeah.
We don't know where he is from Monday to Saturday, but he shows up on game day on Saturday night and he plays his butt off. the Bears are going to get that. And with Caleb Williams, you have that superstar effect at the quarterback position, and he is the tide that raises all ships around him. And I think with the offensive line additions, it's going to be great in Chicago. It's going to be a new look team. And I think obviously Caleb Williams makes a massive leap in year 2.
Yeah, I gave him an A, man. And a big part of it is Ben Johnson. It just is. I thought he was the kind of crown jewel in this head coaching cycle. And not only just that, I don't know how he's going to be as necessarily a head coach, but you know what kind of offensive mind he is. He at a minimum is at the forefront of the offensive revolution in the NFL. Like, you know, you are going to get a guy who, I said this I was on the Barstool Chicago podcast last week, and they were actually they were almost like a little scared when I said this. I was like, there is no excuse with what they've done this offseason for Caleb Williams. Like, this is everything that you could possibly want for a quarterback to succeed. They have done it. They have given him that. And it almost makes you nervous, because it's like, yeah, you have to look at it and be like, yeah, if this doesn't turn out to be, you know, what we saw in Detroit from Ben Johnson, if this isn't a top 5 offense in the NFL, there is a finger to point to about who's holding it back, because we know that Joe Thuney ain't holding it back, right? We know that these receivers that they now have aren't going to be what's holding it back. We know that Ben Johnson, given his track record, what he did with Jared Goff, isn't what's holding him back. So it is a little scary to think about, but it's also like, man, if he becomes the guy that was promised, this could be, you know, even better than, like, even scarier than what we saw in Detroit a year ago from that offense when they were really humming. So
I got to respond to that.
Let's hear it.
So we're saying we're going to point the finger at Caleb Williams if they're not.
I'm saying
you're saying that the Ducks are in a row for him to have success, and I agree with you. But what is one thing that Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles and George McCaskey, what's one thing they can't give Caleb Williams? More experience, and that will come with time. I wrote down 2 other things that stand out to me. Ben Johnson as a head coach. You mentioned it, obviously brilliant on the offensive side of the ball and somebody who implements groundbreaking things week in, week out. I had a coach like that my rookie year. His name was Mark Trestman. The Bears, I believe, were a top 3 offense. We were abysmal on defense. We couldn't survive defensively. But we were great on offense, but we were 8-8. So there is always, you know, how's the defense going to hold up? The other thing, this Bears team isn't used to winning yet. And winning games and being a winner are 2 different things. Like, you know, you can win a couple games early, but we don't know how to finish. Or you could go on a run late, but we haven't been to the dance together. This is going to be a really important season for the Bears. Obviously, a lot of lofty goals that we've put out there and milestones to reach. But at the end of the day, they will have gained a ton of experience throughout this course of the season. They're going to win more than last year. I just wonder if they're ready to take the next leap, because it's a big one.
It's difficult because also the leap's going to have to come through 3 teams that all won 11-plus games last year. Yeah. You know, who didn't necessarily – no one cut bait in terms of their roster. You know, the Vikings added to their roster. The Lions kind of held firm and get a lot back on defense. There's no one of those 3 above them that's like, oh, yeah, they're going to take a big step back. They lost a lot. No. So for the Bears to make the leap after 5 wins last year, projected at 8.5 wins by Vegas, and that's juice now to the under that total, it's going to have to come basically from the top. It's going to have to come with Caleb Williams making that big jump, and we'll see. Year 2. I lean – gosh, what do you lean at 8.5? I think I have to punt on this one. I don't have I think that's where right around where I see them ending up is 8 or 9.
We're going to win total?
Yeah.
10.
Okay, so you're going over.
I
think that's right where I just think the North is too tough, unfortunately. I think too many. It's just going to be difficult to win games in that division this year.
I think the outdoor teams will do well this season. I think that Minnesota could experience a step back because of lack of set experience at the quarterback position. I think that Detroit is going to experience not necessarily a free fall, but a dose of reality with human beings calling the plays on the offensive side of the ball. And I know that they have in-house people that have stepped up to the plate on both sides of the football as it pertains to the staff, but you can't replicate Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. You just can't.
All right, yeah, we'll get to that when we talk about Detroit here in a second. Up next, though, Green Bay Packers. Their offseason, probably the quietest of any team in this division. Key additions. You brought in guard Aaron Banks. You brought in cornerback Nate Hobbs. Key losses. You lost your center Josh Myers. You lost Eric Stokes, but he was not really relied upon last year. The draft was kind of I don't want to say backups draft, but if we're sitting here 6 months from now, Matthew Golden's really the only one who I'd expect to play a role on this team out the gate. And now it's not to say Baron Sorrell can't, or Savion Williams can't, or Anthony Belton can't. It's just like, I think those guys are all backups at this point in time. So it really wasn't an offseason of massive turmoil, but they won 11 games last year. And obviously they have a lot of young guys that they're relying upon, whether it's in the receiving core, whether it's to rush the passer for them on the defensive line. So to me, all around, just kind of a status quo offseason. I went B- for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, this is one of those grades where it's nothing to write home about. You're not necessarily the valedictorian of this offseason, and you're not necessarily making a C in our class, but we're not going to write home about it because I'll give them a B-. And to your point, a lot of these guys are going to be utilized in the depth role, but I think that giving Jordan Love that extra juice on the offensive side of the ball with Matthew Golden, it scares me a little bit. And with all the stuff they do with their receivers and the number of guys who are vying for footballs in Green Bay, it's going to be interesting to see how Matthew Golden pans out there and how they utilize him. As far as Anthony Belton goes, it's always good to have big guys that play the tackle position. And we've got positional versatility on the Green Bay offensive line as it pertains to the inside of the offensive line. Let's get some more guys at tackle. I like this. I'll give them a B-.
Yeah, I think for the Packers, their sort of ascendance, if they are going to be North champs, it's just going to come from Jordan Love and the receiving core, truthfully. That's what it's going to be. They have to be better than they were a year ago. And obviously, he was banged up a ton, but those guys were not good enough. And that's why, push come to shove, Vikings got him twice, Lions got him twice. That was ultimately what cost the Packers North. So,
and the Bears
status quo offseason that
twice.
I think still puts them 9.5 wins is their over-under. That's where I see them as probably about a 10-win team this year. I don't think they made the leap to get any better than that, but they might have a few bounces go their way one way or the other and still get to 10.
I've got Green Bay and Chicago both getting 10 wins, Detroit and Minnesota both getting 9 wins.
Ooh. Speaking of, let's get to the Minnesota Vikings, where a lot of offseason turmoil. Obviously lost their quarterback in Sam Darnold, lost one of their starting safeties in Cam Bynum, one of their versatile guys in that secondary. Retained Byron Murphy, retained Aaron Jones. Those were key pieces for them. Biggest additions, they really revamped their offensive line, stole 2 guys from the Indianapolis Colts and Ryan Kelly at center, Will Fries at right guard. Revamped their D-tackle position with Javon Hargrave, who obviously missed a good portion of last year from the San Francisco 49ers. Jonathan Allen, who also missed a good portion of last year from the Commanders. Add Jordan Mason to be a capable backup for Aaron Jones. And then in the draft, found their starting left guard in Donovan Jackson. I assume that's where he's going to end up. So kind of really did a good job of filling a lot of the holes. The one hole, though, that I know we just saw a domino fall in terms of a trade piece in George Pickens. But, man, I would be surprised if the Minnesota Vikings do not add a cornerback to this group before it's all said and done, because it's Byron Murphy, Mekhi Blackman, and Isaiah Rodgers right now are your starting cornerbacks for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't know. I am worried about that. That is the weak link on this roster. So while I thought they did a great job overall, I still got to go A- because a lot of positions, O-line, D-line, awesome job of revamping it. I thought they did a lot of budget contracts. I love their approach. They found kind of this, I don't want to say market efficiency, but their strategy was obviously target guys who were injured, who were getting smaller deals, smaller guaranteed money deals than other teams would give because they aren't fully healthy. But I still do worry about what they're going to do at the cornerback position. So that's why I went A-.
So what do we know about the Minnesota Vikings? They're going into the season with what is in essence a rookie quarterback. Okay. Coming off of an injury. How do you help bolster his situation and make it better and clear the clouds from the sky? You add some some linemen. Well, they did that. You talked about their additions on the offensive line, obviously in the draft with Donovan Jackson. Defensive front got a little bit better there. We've loved watching Jonathan Allen play for a long time. When Javon Hargrave is right, he's as tough to block as anybody on the inside. So you've got 2 man-eaters on the inside there. I really like that. The only reason I'm not going to give them an A- and I'm going to give them a B+ is because they didn't retain Sam Darnold. They didn't find a way to get that done. And
really?
As much as people love JJ McCarthy, I really loved what I saw from Sam Darnold last year, and not much changes. If you're Sam Darnold in the huddle this year and you look around with the new pieces they've added with the receivers out there on the edge, you're in a good spot. And Kevin O'Connell knows what he's working with. He'd be able to make it better. But now it's J.J. McCarthy's show, and they ship Sam Darnold out west. You better bolster that line. I give them credit for doing so. As it pertains to the corners, that's scary because you look around the division, there's a bunch of guys who can sling the football around and a bunch of pass catchers. You can't leave a team without corners. That's an old Al Davis adage. So in that, as it pertains to that, I'll give them a B+, not an A-.
See, I had the exact opposite take on the Darnold McCarthy situation. That was a good decision in my eyes. Not to say that McCarthy is 100% going to be as good or better than Sam Darnold was. It's that you knew where you stood with Sam Darnold and paying him what the Seahawks paid him. The difference between Sam Darnold's contract, if you gave Sam Darnold what he got from Seahawks, is basically says you can't get Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. Would you rather have Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and then whatever J.J. McCarthy could be, or Sam Darnold? I'm going to go with the former, with 2 other position players, and then shoot for the moon, right? You can go, double-digit wins again with Sam Darnold, and then be holding, yourself crying at the end of January because he's just not good enough to get you through the gauntlet that is the NFC at this point in time. He's just not.
We don't know what J.J. McCarthy is.
That's true. We don't.
And I understand having a quarterback on a rookie deal versus having a guy that's, inflatedly overpaid because that's just the market. I completely understand where you're coming from. We saw what the best version of a rookie quarterback looked like last year with Jaden Daniels. Lightning doesn't strike twice or whatever the hell they say. I just don't see J.J. McCarthy experiencing that kind of success. And if you were to retain Sam Darnold, how many of these pieces would you have been able to afford? And did you need to get that much better?
I thought you did. I thought where they got, and obviously 14 wins, that in and of itself, incredible accomplishment. They did not feel like a Super Bowl team though. Like when you stack them up next to the Lions, when you stack them up next to the Eagles, they just didn't feel like it, unfortunately. So that's why I think they wanted, and this was kind of their plan all along when they drafted them, they just needed to get over the hump. And I think this at least gives them a shot of it. Now, will it? TBD, but they're at least putting themselves out there to do so. All right, last one, Detroit Lions, before we get to the South. A lot of turnover, most notably, though, at the coordinator position. I think the biggest ones come at the coordinator position. Losing OC Ben Johnson, losing DC Aaron Glenn. Big losses, though, to this roster. Carlton Davis at corner, Kevin Zeitler at guard. Those ones will be difficult to replace, I'll say. But now DJ Reed came over. Not sure. I think that's probably a wash or maybe even an upgrade with DJ Reed in there. So with all they bring back defensively, the real big additions to this team come with just guys who didn't play last year, whether it's Aleem McNeil coming back from his ACL, whether it's Aiden Hutchinson coming back from his broken leg. Those will all be massive. The draft I didn't love as much, but it's just hard for me to really go to bat for this offseason given the coordinators. I went C+ because – and it was always going to happen, right? That's the problem with your quote unquote GM or managing head coaches who don't have a hand in scheme, is that when you do truly get a guy who is special in regards to what he can do schematically, they get poached, they leave. And his understudy Tanner Engstrand left too. And so you were left bringing in someone from the Broncos, I'm blanking on his name, John Morton from the Broncos, to come over, and you don't know what he's going to be like, right? Comparatively to Ben Johnson. You're hoping, but you really don't know. And so I just think that given all that, I went C+ for this Detroit Lions offseason because it's just too many hits and too much turnover at the coordinator position to take all at once.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a C. And I want to talk about Aiden Hutchinson for a second because I was watching his progress video, and I know that there's a lot of people who watch that video and immediately say he's cooked or the leg will never be the same. And take it from someone who's had pretty much every injury you can have and had to rehab from everything. The only thing that heals you is time. You can't replace talent, and size can't be coached. And love of the game is something that isn't added over time. Aiden Hutchinson checks all those boxes, and he still is a dangerous rusher. And I'm hoping and praying that he can get back to where he was. I know how hard of a road it's going to be, but if you're a football fan, you should be rooting and cheering for good football. That being said, you should be rooting and cheering for a guy like Aiden Hutchinson to come back from this injury with a vengeance. When I think about the Lions and I think about the taste that's left in our mouths from this past season, it is one of disgust, plagued with injury, and having to learn a lot of new names every week because there's so many guys out there that had never played that were playing defense. Yes, they have a lot of people out the door, both offensively and defensively on the staff, but they're getting a lot of their studs back. I mean, they're getting a lot of their guys back. And you look at the list of retained players, it's a good list, and obviously not the sexiest of drafts, but there's going to be a lot of players in there who will be a part of this unit.
When you got a new OC, how long did it take before it felt like everyone was seemingly on the same page? Like, what's the turnover time compared to, when you obviously have an entrenched OC that's been there a few years and you come into a season versus learning a brand new scheme for a season?
Well, when I was a rookie, Mark Trestman drafted me. He was the head coach. He was also the offensive coordinator. It was his first year with the team. So I got to watch even veterans, 12-year guys learn and have to really focus even more so in meetings because it was something new. I would say that at the end of probably by the end of training camp, you feel as good as you're going to feel. But your understanding of why we're doing certain things, like when Matt Nagy came in 2018, it was at the end of that spring session. You get to go to OTAs, minicamp, all that stuff. We're working out together. We're doing drills on cones and no helmets, shorts. It's an environment that really breeds learning because you're not just beating the hell out of each other. And I think it all depends on the coach, but you should understand your scheme by the end of the spring. And when you show up for training camp, you should be ready to roll. And the foundation is poured in the spring and you add things on in the fall. It doesn't take too long because all football is pretty much the same. The details are different, but what we're doing, it's not rocket science.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. For the Detroit Lions, and it might not, and it's not even just that. Like, it's not that like they have to learn a new scheme or whatever. It's just that Ben Johnson would go into like a lab and create the game plan himself. Like notoriously was that kind of guy who was in control of everything, was not delegating any of it. That's why, his loss and the Bears' gain is, in my opinion, so dramatic. So we'll see. We shall see with the Detroit Lions. All right, we're going to get to NFC South, but first, going to take a quick break.
The clock never stops. Relive the greatest moments with uninterrupted highlights and more.
It's Gareth Bale! Ronaldo! Wonderful goal!
On the UEFA Champions League channel. Streaming free.
Carolina Panthers. Dead last, obviously, in the South a year ago, but they made some big additions this offseason. Turk Wharton comes over from KC to play next to Derek Brown there. Trayvon Merritt comes over to play safety from the Las Vegas Raiders. Gave, obviously, J.C. Horn a big deal. Brought Michael Jackson back. Tommy Tremble back. The draft, though, is where I think they really shined this offseason. Tetairoa McMillan, Nick Scorton, Prince Luman-Miel, and Trevor Etienne. I think they got at least in that first and second rounder 2 impact players at 2 very valuable positions that, let's be honest, they needed impact. They stunk at a year ago. So I love those. We'll see if it makes a impact right out the gate, but I went B+. I think it was more good than bad. It was things going in the right direction, but this was so bad a year ago that it is more than a one-off season turnaround. But this is how you kick things off, I'll say.
Yeah, I'm going B+ as well. And Tataroa McMillan is a clear winner at, the number 8 spot in the first round for the Carolina Panthers. And if I'm a GM, my thought process is, let's find out what our strengths of our football team are and let's make them stronger. Everybody's always worried about the weaknesses. I'd say let's just make our strengths really strong. And so take the Bengals, for example, with Joe Burrow. They went and they got both of their monsters done, and they're going to be in Cincinnati for a while. And for the Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young has been a guy who has really shined for them, and he has, like a phoenix, he's risen from the ashes, and we love to see that because, like I was talking about with Aiden Hutchinson, we don't want to beat guys up when they're down. We want to pick them up, and they're going to have exactly that with McMillan at the receiver position. You mentioned Turk Wharton coming over from Kansas City, a guy who is a pass rush specialist on the interior. Take it from me, someone who tried to block Turk Wharton, he gets your edges very quickly. He's laterally efficient with his moves, and he has enough power to threaten the bull rush department. I'm going to go B+ with the Panthers. It's going to be fun to watch this team continue to bloom because they've got pieces at the right spots now. They're just filling in their roster.
Yeah, I loved what they did in free agency in terms of not going after the big ticket guys, like not thinking that one Josh Sweat turns you around or one $25 million a year DT turns you around. No, it's like you got to hit just a few good players. You just need some baseline to this roster. You don't need superstars. You need to set a foundation, and I think they did that well in free agency, and I think their draft strategy played it really well as well. So 6.5 wins is their Vegas over-under total. I think that's probably fair until we really see what Bryce Young looks like this year with this receiving core, and if this defense can turn things around at all from a year ago. But it wouldn't surprise me if this team competes for the South. South's still very much up for grabs. I think anyone could be holding that trophy come into this upcoming season. New Orleans Saints. Now, the one team who may not be able to compete for that trophy, that is if Derek Carr is unable to play. I just don't see it happening for the Saints if that's the case. But they had an offseason where, they did not act like it was a rebuild. They acted like they're still fully in the thick of things. They re-signed Chase Young. They added Justin Reed, added Devon Godshaw, lost Paulson Adebo. I love their draft, truthfully. Like, I can't hate on the actual players they signed. Justin Reed's a great safety. Their draft, I thought the value they got from Kelvin Banks, from Vernon Broughton, Jonas Sanker, Danny Stutzman, I believe all those guys. Sanker was a little lower on my board, but all the other guys were much higher on my board than where they came off. And, it was good. It just gets a C for me because I think they are kicking the can still. It's just the strategy of still pushing the cap to the limit, still trying to act like we're a playoff team when your engine's gone, your quarterback's hurt. If Derek Carr truly is not going to play this season, it's like putting new rims on a car without an engine, right? It's just, what are you going to do?
Read the room, prioritize.
Taking out a loan to put a speaker system in a car you can't ride. It's just fiscally irresponsible. That's why I'm going C. But if we just go player by player, I actually think they did a great job of evaluating their free agency and their draft. It's just this Saints team is, and just I'm looking right now at the future year cap. You want to take a guess at how much over the cap they are already for 2026?
$28 trillion.
No, they're not the U.S. government. They are the New Orleans Saints. $42 million over the cap next season already.
Not good. You know what is good? By the way, C-. I'll go lower than you. But we'll go with the positives here. Kelvin Banks Jr., ready to play. Roll him out the tunnel. and get him playing football. Throw him on whatever hell number he's going to wear. Just let him go kick ass. We like a lot of the guys on the offensive line for the New Orleans Saints. I repeat, we like the New Orleans Saints offensive line. So whoever's back there,
great run blocking line,
is going to have some ass kickers up there in the run game, set up the heavy play action stuff. You throw Kelvin Banks at tackle, you kick one of your tackles inside a guard. Boom, you've got a unit now. You've got a unit. Retain that unit. Read the room. That's the unit that you keep. And then everybody else, you have to pay the tolls or not pay. And you got to understand that you're not in the thick of the Super Bowl contention right now. So get your books right and get ready to do this thing down the road.
We'll see. It's tough to be a Saints fan right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for all of you out there. But because you're not – the worst problem is they're not bad. This isn't a bad football team. They could easily – if Derek Carr is healthy, they could win 9 or 10 games, and I wouldn't bat an eye.
Yep.
Now, they'd have to stay very healthy because they're very thin, but they could win 9 or 10 games. It's just they're objectively not a Super Bowl contender. And that 9 or 10 win season, you'll only do the exact same thing next year and just sort of pick a few more pieces off of it because you can't keep paying guys, and you'll lose another Paulson Adebo. You'll lose, another Ryan Ramczyk, or someone's, you're going to lose Cam Jordan and DeMario Davis soon because they're 35 years old and going to retire. Like, you are going to start losing more and more pieces each offseason. And so you're basically saying we're going to outpace from a draft perspective the talent we add with what we're losing and keep, pushing it to the limit from a cap perspective. But it just, at some point, you just got to pay the piper and realize that 7 or 8 wins ain't worth the long-term flexibility that you could be having right now. Atlanta Falcons. A relatively tame free agency period for a team with a rookie quarterback, but that's obviously because they're not paying just the rookie quarterback. They're still paying Kirk Cousins this offseason. What he does, what they do with him in terms of trade, cutting, is still a TBD. No one really knows what's going on. Obviously, they'd love to get something in return from him, but given how he played down the stretch last year, I don't see that happening. Their big additions, Divine Diablo at linebacker, Leonard Floyd off the edge, Mike Ford. The real big addition, though, it came in the draft. Came with those 2 first-rounders, Jalen Walker, James Pierce, and then Xavier Watson the third. I think all those guys end up starting or seeing close to starting snaps for this Falcons team.
Yeah, and don't forget about Billy Bowman as well. Good player.
He's a slot corner.
I mean, that guy can be everywhere on the football field, and there's a lot of uses for a guy like that. You talked about Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr. I mean, this was the issue, right? That the first and second level of this defense, not only at times in the run game, but the lack of pass rush was really a concern for the Atlanta Falcons, so they addressed that. I'm really excited to watch Michael Penix go to work because what I remember from Michael Penix Jr. was him going toe-to-toe with Jaden Daniels in Washington, D.C. in prime time, and the nation just being like this. Or everybody firing up those tweets where it's like, I guess they were right. They should have drafted him. This is good. It's his team. Atlanta's going to be a lot of fun to watch. They've got some edge rushers. I'm going to give them a B+. And you know what? I was looking at this list, and there's a retained section, and Jake Matthews is right there, a staple for the Atlanta Falcons. For a second, I thought it said retired, and I had a panic, man, I feel old moment. But we're good. Jake Matthews still earning the dough, still protecting the backside.
I went B-. I was a little less. I didn't love trading the future first. To me, I've obviously explained why. It feels like what a GM who's never made the playoffs does when he knows that if he doesn't make the playoffs again, he loses his job. And it just didn't feel like your best long-term decision-making to do something of that nature. But obviously that's kind of the nature of this business, is that when you do give GMs a longer leash, sometimes when they're at the end of it, they make plays that they shouldn't be making, or that not say they shouldn't be making, but like that aren't in their best long-term interest because they have to save their jobs. And so that's what that felt like to me. We'll see obviously how it turns out and what that first round pick ends up being. But you better hope, given what they gave up, you basically have to have a top 10 sort of evaluation on James Pierce to make it worth your while. I did not. Some people did. So I can't know that right now and say that's for sure a dumb move. We shall see. What I know I think is a dumb move, though, is losing Drew Dahlman at center, who was hurt last year, who didn't play the whole season. But losing him at center and backfilling with nobody. They added Joshua Gray as a UDFA, that's the only addition to this offensive line.
He must have had a damn good workout.
Because this offensive line, I mean, it's fine, but it's like it's a fine run blocking offensive line. It was already kind of giving up something in pass protection at times last year. We saw Kirk Cousins getting roasted throughout last season. It is not a plus pass protecting offensive line by any means. Caleb McGarry, Matthew Bergeron, issues up front. They didn't add to it at all. Now, Michael Penix has great pocket presence. He gets the ball out quickly. He doesn't take a lot of sacks.
But he's also got a long line of injury history. We got to take care of this guy.
But that's the injury history and the fact that now your guy who was the backup filling in is now the starter. Well, what if he goes down? Who's your backup to the backup from last year? I do worry about the depth, that if anyone gets hurt up front, you are putting in like Storm Norton. You're putting in Elijah Wilkinson. You're putting in guys you don't want to be playing for you. You don't have a competent 6, 7, 8 offensive lineman there in Atlanta. Let me tell you this.
You're on a fast track there in Atlanta. That's turf. And when you're an offensive lineman, you pray that, that you don't have to play on turf. So if you're less than skilled or less than skilled relative to the starters, you're going to have a lot of issues on the turf. And Michael Penix could be running for his life. Where do you think Kirk Cousins is going to end up? I have a theory.
I really don't know at this point. I don't know who would want him. I think he's going to get cut outright and sign on to be a backup somewhere for like really cheap, maybe like a backup to a young quarterback, I would think, to try to mentor him, someone who's drafted someone recently. What was your thought? Let me think about it for a second.
Okay. You tell me what I'm going to say. What do you think I'm going to say here?
Chicago Bears?
No. This guy has earned $300 million in his career, okay? I saw him on the desk. I believe it was for Monday Night Football.
Oh, that's great.
Like off the sideline, they have the cool desk down at the field. He was on there. He was fantastic. He was, yuck, khaki pant. Like, America will love this guy if they see more of him. And I thought he was really well spoken. I think one of these networks is going to give him an offer he can't refuse. They love quarterbacks up there on those desks, Mike. You know this.
Plus, if he goes, like, the more you spend as a backup, the more kind of your stock dwindles as an analyst, because, they
want starters,
backup quarterback analysts. They want the guy who just came from being a starter, leaves, and now he's on the booth. So I actually like that take. That's a good take. Not that we need anyone taking our jobs here, but that's a good take.
I'll give Kirk a run for his money.
Last team here, and then we wrap up the North and South. Tampa Bay Bucks, your winners from a year ago. Their key additions: Hassan Reddick, they added to rush the passer, obviously from the Jets and his saga.
I remember that guy.
Yeah, dude. They wanted out from that contract as soon as they traded for him. Anthony Walker, the linebacker, comes over to play next to Levante David as well. Not a lot of key losses because they were able to retain Chris Godwin, Levante David. Guys want to play for the Bucs, it seems like. They got something building special there. And I love this draft class, man. Emeka Egbuka, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, David Walker. All value picks in my eyes, all positions where they needed
Tez Johnson can go too.
And then Tez Johnson could be like your third down cheat code. When you see man coverage, just take it his way because that guy can get open. This was a straight A. Close to an A+ for me. But for Tampa Bay Bucks team that I thought did exceptionally well to transition from Brady to obviously another now franchise quarterback in Baker Mayfield and not really have this big drop off because they did go all in a little bit from a cap perspective to win that one. I think they're back in the thick of it. This is a team that with this roster right now, they can compete. This is a team that, in my opinion, can compete for a Super Bowl in the NFC.
You watch those kids are swimming in the pool, swimming, and their head's underwater, and you're worried. You're like, come up for air, Johnny, come up for air. And then they go, and then they're just back at it again. That's the Bucs in their transition with the quarterbacks. They won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Everything was hunky-dory. And then you heard Brady on the broadcast talking about, well, they have fun. But, I thought winning Super Bowls was fun. This looks fun, too. You gave him an A. I'm going to give him an A. Give weapons to Baker Mayfield and just let him cook. Let him cook. And I love bringing Levante David back. That's huge. Chris Godwin's going to be healthy. I'm sure he's getting there right now. He is such a weapon. Hassan Reddick is a guy that we've seen historically has been able to ruin some game plans because of his ability to get to the quarterback. You talked about Anthony Nelson and Anthony Walker. I say have as many Anthonys on your team because Ants is short for Anthony, and Ants can lift 80 times their body weight. So get as many Ants on your football team as possible, and you will have a really strong team.
Oh, dude, I'd love to see an Ant back squad. I feel like they would. You kidding me?
Yeah, dude. Do they stand up? Do they get up and put the bar on their back and squat, or are they like doing like a little like
or just a little movement? I think they have to get up on their back.
Because back squat, it would just be a push up for them.
Yeah.
And then front squat, they'd have to like stand.
Front squat, it would look nuts.
Yeah. Rashawn Slater did it. That's what got him so hyped for the draft. Remember? He was in like rec specs, front squatting like 600 pounds. Everybody was like, get that guy on my team. I digress.
The one Bucs thing we should talk about, though, OC, no more Liam Cohen.
Yep.
That's huge. And obviously we killed the Lions for losing Ben Johnson. But I do think that at least the Bucs have a guy who was the passing game coordinator under Liam Cohen a year ago, promoted to OC. He went to Yale, Josh Grizzard, intelligent human being, I'm guessing.
Grizzard.
And they almost foolproofed it by adding just more talent to the weapons on this roster. Like you brought back everyone, and then you added more guys.
And you have Baker Mayfield, bro.
Who did it?
It's like having a great babysitter. Like no matter where we go, if we've got, Julie's going to take care of everybody. The kids are going to be safe, fed. The diapers are going to be changed. That's Baker Mayfield, dude. As much fun as we think that Baker Mayfield is, and, I want to go have margaritas with Baker. Like I want to be in the huddle with him. That's what a leader looks like. They don't have that. I mean, I love Jared Goff. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think the Lions will be all right. But I'm way less concerned about Liam Cohen leaving than I am Ben Johnson leaving.
Yes.
So I'm not going to give them the same treatment because it's it's different quarterbacks.
And because we just saw him, they just had Dave Canales, right? And Baker was great under Dave Canales. And now I think Liam Cohen, they were better under it. The offensive line was also better, and you added Bucky Irving to it, and the talent was better around him. So I do think that it's going to hurt. I don't think it's going to hurt nearly as much as Ben Johnson. And 9.5 right now is their win total over under. I think this could be like a 13-14 win team. Truly. I think this is the clear team one in the South. And really, other people can challenge. They could fall off. Obviously, things can not bounce their way. But I do just think on paper, this team is damn good at this point in time. All right. There you have it. NFC North, NFC South. Report cards for all 8 teams. We'll be doing the East and the West and the NFC tomorrow. We'll be doing the AFC next week. Thanks so much for you guys tuning in. Until next time, keep pushing.
Peace.